Hi everyone, this is Dr. Anamta Rizvi, a UPSC English Literature faculty, and today we will be talking about modern age, a very, very important age from the perspective of UPSC English Literature subject. Now, even if you are studying only for your mains paper, or if English literature is your optional subject, then this lesson would be a very, very fruitful and important one. First of all, 1900 onwards, क्या हुआ है European history में, what exactly were the changes, what sensibilities the modern age brought, ये सब ज़रूरी है for your general information GS paper के लिए, and also modern age जो है, जो 1900 onwards आपका age है, that has played a very crucial role in your English literature option subject because entire one paper is set on this. So this is important. आपके जितने भी important writers हैं, be it James Joyce or your whatever writers that you have, for instance, Joseph Conrad, James Joyce, E.M. Foster, Raja Rao, जो Indian writer हैं, all these writers who belong to this age, 20th century, are included in your course, as well as your Samuel Beckett, Philip Larkin, A.K. Ramanujan, and so on. So there are a lot of writers. Today we will be talking about what exactly is this age. When did this age begin? How it began? What were the features and characteristics of this age? Okay, so let's go ahead with today's lesson. Okay, so guys, today this is 1900 to 1950. This is the the typical period that we consider as a modern age, and then of course आता है postmodern, which we will also be talking about in our next class. Okay, so moving ahead about our first of historical background. Now, it is important to note that this era began. If we look at the year, that was 1901. Why? Because this was the year when Queen Victoria died. That was a period. Now, from 1837 to 1901. Now, this was also a very long Victorian age because of Queen Victoria. She lived during this period. 1901 के बाद once this queen died, Queen Victoria died, so एक rapidly transformation हुआ था, transition हुआ था, of course from the monarchy, but also in the sensibilities. So this is after the Victorian age to the mid-20th century, 1901 to 1950, roughly we can consider this age. This was shaped by two world wars. Now, this is important to note that First World War as well as Second World War, two of the most, you can say, devastating wars that happened in the history of mankind, that happened in the modern age. Okay, from 1914 to 1919, that was the First World War, the Second World War from 1939 to 1945. So such a long period of time was engaged during this. Now, when this entire atmosphere is engulfed by war, you would guess already, you would know how would the sensibilities be. The world was considered, whether it's a wasteland, as T.S. Eliot said, there was war poetry, there was existential crisis, there was huge level of, despair, gloominess, and so much of despondency in the air. Okay, so shaped by two world wars, industrial growth, rise of socialism, decline of empire, and scientific discovery. So yes, these were the things that sort of shaped scientific discoveries, new inventions were happening, there were new theories that were being developed. So all these things impacted a lot the living lifestyle, the reality of the humans, as well as it mirrored in the literature. Marked by uncertainty, collapse of traditional structures, and questioning of religious faith. Now, this is important, that a lot of things that were just taken literally as a grand narrative, as a grand truth, they were questioned, they were, there was huge, the entire grounds of religious faith shook because of such devastation that happened. The questioning of God, whether God is actually there. If He is there, then why did these wars happen? Okay, so these were the questions that were kept on asking. Then you have defining characteristics, break from Victorian optimism, the age that was filled with optimism. Why? Because there was an increase in their expansion, colonial expansion of the British Raj. Then there was, of course, scientific discoveries. England was getting richer, superpower, everything England had. But this declined in the beginning of the century, 20th century, and this was the modern age. Sense of alienation, disillusionment, and fragmentation in society. Now, all these kind of things, as the idea of materialism increased, then alienation. Okay, money became the most important thing as compared to any values, any ideals that were celebrated in the Romantic age or the Victorian age. Now, this became a very, very important, the idea of power, the idea of financial, supremacy. So alienation, disillusionment, and fragmentation society became very rampant, visible everywhere. All the poets, all the writers, dramatists talked about it. Focus on subjectivity and subconscious mind. For instance, there was huge level of psychoanalysis also that began with Sigmund Freud. Okay, so this was also, subconscious mind पे discover करना, research करना, and to study that subjectivity, and preference for irony, ambiguity, and open endings, even moral resolutions. Then you have modernist movement. Now this was a period जहाँ पे बहुत सारे modern movements भी आए थे. Imagism, symbolism, cubism. Although all these movements came because everyone was trying to do an experiment in writing. And this was an age जो कि बहुत जल्दी grasp करती थी because it was an age of experiments. Writers were not writing in the cliched, normal, conventional manner. But हर चीज में, हर लिटरी एस्पेक्ट में, इवन आर्टिस्टिक एस्पेक्ट में ये चेंजेस हो रहे थे. सो सेंट्रल लिटरी करंट ऑफ द एज, मॉडर्निज्म, एजरा पाउंड डिक्टेड मेक इट न्यू. एजरा पाउंड का था मेक इट न्यू. सो मॉडर्न एज का यू कैन से अगर कोई मंत्रा था, मेक इट न्यू, एक्सपेरिमेंट विथ थिंग, मेक थिंग्स अनकन्वेंशनल, डोंट फॉलो द सेम पाथ एज predecessors writers. Experimentation style, free verse, symbolism, images, stream of consciousness, cubism, all these movements were coming. Writers were writing. Literature became international, borrowing influences from psychology, philosophy, and the arts. So interdisciplinary. It became interdisciplinary, so many aspects, be it psychology, be it fine arts, be it performing arts, be it anything. So literature became a very crucial part of so many segments of the society. Now, impact of wars, as I mentioned, that World War I and II was mammoth impact it had, colossal impact. Now, writers, जैसे कि अगर हमने World War I के writers देखें, C.F. Sassoon, Wilfred Owen, Rupert Brooke, all these were war poets and they wrote in the First World War. Similarly, Second World War, deepened existential crisis and absurd tendencies जो कि हमें बहुत देखने को मिलती है 1950s में. चाहे वो Samuel Beckett हो गए, चाहे Philip Larkin हो गए. So many writers were talking about existential crisis or the angry young men, for instance, John Osborne. So all these writers had huge level of existential crisis, which we will see in 1950s. Literature became a record of trauma, futility, and the absurdity of human conflict. So this is the very important point. Literature became the focal point जहाँ पे लोग अपने traumatic experiences, you can say the futility of life, and the existential despair, all these started getting documented in literature. Literature became an archive, a huge treasure of such documentation, which we still see and read. Now, dominant themes kya thi? As I mentioned, alienation of the individual, akelapan. Because psychology came in, the mental I won't say कि mental health इतना ज़्यादा importance था जितना अब के time पर है, but yes, mental health became a huge kind of concern. Stream of consciousness यही है कि अपने unfiltered thoughts को paper पे pen करना. Okay, so alienation, loss of faith in religion, search for identity and meaning, exploration of sexuality, okay, all these started coming up. And then, of course, the absurdity and futility of existence. क्यों है दुनिया में? What is our purpose? What is our use? Then modern poetry. Now, modern poetry was very different from what was written in the Victorian era. Legends, poet legends जैसे W.B. Yeats, T.S. Eliot, the Nobel Prize winners, they completely changed the face of modern poetry. So poetry abandoned Victorian diction and strict meter, free verse, symbolism, unrhymed meter. Okay, all these kind of started happening and it became all popular. W.B. Yeats, mysticism, Irish Renaissance, इस पे focus करते थे. T.S. Eliot, all these poets are, by the way, W.B. Yeats, T.S. Eliot, W.H. Auden. It's in your course. Very important poets UPSC literature के लिए. So ऐसे भी important and of course for your paper also. Cultural despair, The Wasteland, The Hollow Man, Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, जो आपकी course में है, that talks about the existential despair, crisis, that what is my purpose, alienation and ennui. So many things have been there in the work. Ezra Pound, Images, Precision, W.H. Auden, Political Engagement, later existential concerns, all these are seen in W.H. Auden. Modern novel में देखें तो there was a huge shift from, just a linear narration. लीनियर नरेशन मतलब कि एक ऑर्डर में एक क्रोनोलॉजिकल ऑर्डर में नरेट हो रहा है, जैसे हार्डी हो गया, चार्ल्स डिकन्स हो गए, बट नो, this was a huge experimentation age with novels. So shift from external events to inner consciousness, psychological exploration, symbolism and non-linear structure. Psychological elements बहुत है, जैसे जेम्स जॉयस हो गए, Portrait of the Artist as Young Man, Virginia Woolf, Mrs. Dalloway, or you have D.H. Lawrence, Sons and Lovers, Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness. All these modern novelists showed a very different side and a way of writing literature, and this became important. Now, modern drama, if you look at that, now drama was a very different league in this period, because drama turned to realism, social critique, and later existential absurdism, that why are we in this world. G.B. Shaw का जितने भी प्लेस है, G.B. Shaw was also writing the Victorian era, 1890s में लिखना शुरू किया था, बट इनके जो ये प्लेस थे, they were just stark reality of the social criticism prevalent in the society. जितने भी social evils होते थे उसके बारे में बात करते थे, and it was a huge discussion of that है, जो G.B. Shaw अपने points लाते थे अपने theatre के through. G.B. Shaw के जैसे social criticism, Wit Man and Superman, Pygmalion. T.S. Eliot was also very important. He was a Nobel Prize winner. इनको poetry हो गया या इनका criticism हो गया, इनका drama हो गया, जैसे Cocktail Party है, or you have your Murder in the Cathedral. All these works were very famous and important. So ये एक it was to be a poetic drama कहते थे, because there used to be rhyme, it used to be a drama in the form of a poem. It was like that, but very important, very layered with meanings, deep thematic concerns. That was T.S. Eliot. Samuel Beckett तो 1950s में आए थे, but yes, you can consider it, because Samuel Beckett का जितना भी work था, that was because of the consequences of the 1945 war. Okay, the Second World War का जो भी consequences था, repercussions था, that came out in the form of creative output through Beckett. Focus on psychological depth rather than spectacle. Major authors and work, जैसे मैंने बात किया, poets कौन थे? Yeats, Eliot, Pound, Auden, Wilfred Owen. Novelist, Joyce, Woolf, Lawrence Conrad. Playwright, Shaw, Eliot and Beckett, and these authors explored dislocation, identity, morality and the fragility of civilization. इनके अलावा भी बहुत सारे writers हैं important, but yes, if a note comes on modern work, modern era, then these are the typical quintessential writers that you can quote in your answer. Okay, you will get really good marks, because ये सबसे important writers, poets, novelists, dramatists हैं of that era. Legacy and influence. Now, modernism reshaped literature by rejecting linear plots, ornate diction. They came to real aspects of life. Colloquial way में बात करना, एक realism दिखाना, realistic portrayal करना, that became the most important feature of that age in their work. They paved the way for postmodernism with its focus on fragmentation, irony, and questioning and challenging the grand truths, the grand narrative. Postmodernism ने बस यही किया है, जो चीज़ें कभी भी question नहीं होती थी, उनको दोबारा अपने thought में, अपने beliefs में, अपने writing के through question करना. The modern age remains a turning point where literature absorbs psychology, philosophy, and artistic innovation to mirror the complexities of the 20th century. So guys, this was the modern age, a very important modern era. And this is something that's not only important for UPSC English Literature student, but for all the students even preparing for GS paper. Okay, so with this guys, I will take, I'll end my lesson, and I hope to see you for my next lesson, that is on postmodern age. Thank you, study hard. And if you want to take up UPSC English Literature optional, the entire description is there in the comment section. You can have a look. It's there in the description box also. So have a look, follow it. And if you want to go ahead with UPSC English Literature classes, आपको every day you get live classes, पूरा course cover कराया जाता है, paper 1, paper 2, everything in detail from the Renaissance era, जो आपका Shakespeare से शुरुआत है, till the postmodern age. Everything is covered, and आपको उसमें recordings मिलती हैं. You get lectures, you get answer corrections, you get everything that is there on the plate. So thank you everyone. Have a good day, and I'll see you guys very soon.